In this series of The Shadows, we will be discussing and debating a range of diverse topics relating to the end of days and the coming of the Antichrist, such as secret societies, the Dajjal system or the Antichrist system, the New World Order, globalization, war, colonialism, religious manipulation, one world religion, digital currencies, politics, mind manipulation, and much more. The term Illuminati has captured the imagination of millions of people today, whose activities and agendas remain a mystery to the public eye. Historically, the name usually refers to the Bavarian Illuminati, an Enlightenment-era secret society founded on 1st of May 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. The Illuminati have often been alleged to conspire to control world affairs by masterminding events and planting agents in government and corporations in order to gain political power and influence and to establish a new world order, influencing society from behind the shadows while advocating individualistic, ideological and materialistic notions, whilst creating divisions amongst communities and creating civil unrest within neighbourhoods and with one another, with the aim to bring about global turmoil and rebellion before the new world order is established. Within the shadows are prominent members who plot and plan, spinning a web of deceit, such as secret societies and high-ranking bureaucrats who have penetrated positions of power within the government. They intend to recreate society and ensure control through proxy laws with a globalist agenda. These elements have empowered secretive divisions, societies and occults like the Illuminati, Freemasons, Skull and Bones Society, the Bohemian Club, Knights Templar, Rosicrucian, the Masonic Lodge, the Guild, the Grand Lodge, etc., or the Brotherhood of the Snake, so eloquently described by Madame Blavatsky. The Illuminati operate on a more significant scale in secret with a global agenda and authority. They occupy critical diplomatic positions within government and society with access to limitless wealth and reserves to support and to implement their projects efficiently and to deprive humanity in ways they believe wise. The ultimate architect who moves within the shadows under the guise of the New World Order possesses architectural control, more appropriately known as the Antichrist. With his satanic influence and rule, he leads his disciples towards the inauguration of a new one world order and a new one world religion of his founding with lasting global implications.
Secret societies have existed for thousands of years. They all have one thing in common, unique knowledge which they swear by oath to keep secret. For armed with this knowledge, limited to themselves, they believe they can control others. One of the earliest secret societies still exists today, the Masons. It is believed that its origins date back to ancient Egypt, when only a select guild of stoneworkers possessed special mathematical knowledge necessary for building the pyramids. Throughout history, Masons kept their methods to themselves so that only they could build the great structures throughout time that still stand today. First, the pyramids, and on to the great castles and cathedrals of Europe. But secret societies were not limited to tradesmen.
Welcome back. Well, journalists who exposed the Bilderberg secretive society found an unexpected supporter last week from popular American TV host.
Thank you for joining us. I just want to thank you for the welcome you just gave me, and I just want to say that anybody out there watching, that if you're in the secret Bilderberg group...
And that drew national attention to an issue that's only spoken about in whispers. Well, joining me now is the journalist who caught Stephen's attention and informed him about the issue. Luke Rutkowski, hi there. I'm glad you're with us today. So you kind of explained it to Stephen Colbert, but I want you to tell our audience, what is this Bilderberg group and why should we care?
Well, Bilderberg is a meeting of the most influential and powerful people around the world once a year in secret. The top heads of media, banking, corporations, and government meet in secret to decide policy that they will play out throughout the years. Now, David Yan, the chairman of the Bilderberg Group, actually said that the Bilderberg Group created the European Union and the Euro. So these people are very powerful. They rule in secrecy, and they're also a bunch of eugenicists.
Well, who are these people? I mean, do you know anything about them? Because these are some harsh accusations.
Of course. I mean, we go out there. Yeah, as a journalist, I go out there and I confront the head of the World Bank, the head of the IMF, Bill Clinton, John Rockefeller, David Rockefeller, and all these politicians, media heads as well, and I ask them, what did you do at the Bilderberg meeting? And as soon as I ask that question one-on-one with one of these elitists, you see their face turn white and they literally run away. I'm making a whole documentary about this. We confronted about 30 Bilderberg members, and every reaction we get is exactly the same. They run away, they won't talk to you. They don't want to tell people what they're doing because this is supposed to be secret, top secret, so much that the mainstream media doesn't even bring it up.
So tell us about the exchange you had with Stephen Colbert here, because he's considered, you know, part of the mainstream media.
He definitely is. I went to a show and I talked to him beforehand. My video actually got half of the conversation. There was more to it. But he actually even brought up the Bohemian Grove, which is another secret society. And he even talked about how billionaires walk around naked and worship a stone owl in the forest here in Red Grove, California. And then we told him about the Bilderberg Group, and he was well informed about that. And then he brought it up on his show magically, which was the first time ever that I think mainstream media brought up the Bilderberg Group to millions and millions of people, which is a huge success.
And I believe we do have a clip of that exchange. Let's play it.
The welcome you just gave me, and I just want to say that anybody out there watching, that if you're in the secret Bilderberg Group, please don't assassinate freelance reporters. It's just not nice, guys. It's not nice. And please, call me. You owe me one, buddy. Okay.
Luke, were you surprised at all that Mr. Colbert has decided to sort of raise this question during his show?
I was extremely surprised because, again, the mainstream media that also attends these meetings, the heads of all the 5 corporations that control the mainstream media attend these meetings, and they do not dare talk about it. Any other journalist, I talked to Paula Zahn, Lou Dobbs, Brian Williams about the issue, and they all don't want to talk about it. They run away. I had the chief editor of the New York Times run away from me because I asked her a question about the Bilderberg Group, which David Rockefeller actually thanks publicly for covering up their plan for a one-world government.
So you're saying they all know what it is, they just don't want to talk about it, right?
Yeah, I had Jill Abramson, chief editor of the New York Times, tell me, yes, I know about the Bilderberg Group, but I'm not saying anything. And this was on C-SPAN, actually. You could go on C-SPAN and watch the exchange between me and Jill Abramson live on TV, and then I talked to her afterwards. I tried to shake her hand, talk to her human to human, and she literally just ran off. She was running away from me, and I was being very polite, and she just didn't want to talk about anything. And there needs to be an open dialogue. What these elites do in secret, the public demands to know. If 100 of the world's biggest celebrities met in secret, the media would be all over it. But you have the most influential, powerful people in the world meeting once a year, and not a beep from the mainstream media. Why is that?
So besides going on RT, besides talking to Stephen Colbert about this, what else are you doing to sort of spread the message? You touched upon it earlier. I just want you to elaborate a little bit on that.
I mean, as citizen journalists, we go out there and we interview politicians, heads of media. Charlie Rose is one of my favorite members as well because I talked to him. You know, I actually said I was one of his fans. I shook his hand, asked him about the Bilderberg Group. He literally ran away. Caught him in the hallway. I was like, sir, let's please talk. He ran away. He was scrambling for exits. He was running away from simple questions, from simple dialogue. There's nothing wrong with communication, and when these people run away, they show that they have something to hide. And we are here to shed light on all the tyranny that's happening in this country that's controlled by these elites, who are also part of the Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission.
So Luke, it looks like a lot of people are running away from you. See, I can't really get up from this chair because I'm kind of strapped with the IFB and the microphone, but I would still be here. No running on our end there. Luke Rutkowski, I want to thank you for your time live there for us in our New York City studios.
Listen, I am a happy member of the Bohemian Grove. I like the folks who come there, and it's really inappropriate for me to talk about the group beyond that. Thank you.
Have you been there for the ceremony with the cremation of care?
Frankly, I don't think that's something I need to talk to you about. This is what's called ambush journalism, and I disrespect you for that as well. So thank you and goodbye.
Been in the ritual?
It's none of your damn business.
Every year in mid-July, a few hundred men gathered together for a celebration on a 2,700-acre private campground in Monte Rio, California. Some call it a cult meeting, but not just any cult meeting. This is a gathering of the world's most elite and powerful men, including senior media executives, prominent CEOs, and even retired presidents. This is the Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian Club, formed in 1872, started out as a San Francisco-based men's art club, with bohemianism being the practice of an unconventional lifestyle. While the club started out as a group of artists and musicians, it was gradually overrun by more prominent individuals, and eventually became a group of the world's most powerful figures. Today, the club has around 3,200 members, dead and alive, notably Bill Clinton, the Bush family, and Herbert Hoover, who once referred to it as the greatest party on earth. The club motto is "Weaving spiders come not here," implying that business concerns and networking are to be left outside, but the truth in this slogan is greatly debated. The Grove is famous for a 1942 meeting during which the planning for the Manhattan Project took place. J. Robert Oppenheimer, nuclear scientist Ernest Lawrence, and various military officials gathered together at the Grove for a meeting that led to the creation and eventual use of the atomic bomb. Grove members take pride in this historic event and often retell the story to new attendees. But in the decades following this renowned meeting, the Bohemian Grove has been pinned with a far more devious reputation. Believers in the Illuminati, a world elite group that dictates global events and affairs, often cite the Bohemian Grove as evidence. While seemingly outlandish, such a claim definitely holds some merit. Take this photo from 1967, for example. Recognize these two gentlemen? That's Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, years before either man became president. Accordingly, many people believe the Grove is utilized to set up world policies, such as whom will become the next US president. But conspiracy theories aside, what exactly goes on during the annual 17-day gathering at the Bohemian Grove? Well, that's just the question. Today, the Grove is an incredibly secretive place that is heavily guarded by security. During each retreat, the area is sealed off by helicopters, a private security force, and armed guards, making it clear that outsiders are strictly not welcome. Nonetheless, truth seekers have gotten in before. In the year 2000, conservative radio show host Alex Jones managed to sneak into the Grove during a summer party, and the footage he captured is nothing short of bizarre and perhaps even sinister.
Time malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free. You shall burn me once again! Now with these flames, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign, ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire.
The unsettling footage apparently depicts the cremation of care, just one of the many alleged bizarre rituals performed by the club. During the ceremony, members dress up in red robes and cremate a coffin containing a human effigy made out of paper mache. The ritual is performed in front of the mascot of the Grove, a giant owl statue. While said to merely personify wisdom, the symbol of the owl has often been described as a prominent symbol of the aforementioned Illuminati. While theories can only run rampant in regards to what else goes on at this mysterious retreat, one thing's for certain: members of the club remain very secretive about it. When inquired about the Bohemian Grove, numerous politicians have acted uncharacteristically sketchy in response.
It's the place you attended. It's a secret society. Can you tell us at least who invited you?
You know, it's nice to know that there's some people who have fantasy lives that have nothing to touch with. Nice to have you here. Bye-bye.
You can't answer the question? You can't? Can you answer the question?
See you later.
The Bohemian Club, as you say, the Bohemian Club, that's where all those rich Republicans go up and stand naked against redwood trees, right? I've never been to the Bohemian Club, but you ought to go. It'd be good for you. Get some fresh air.
Yes, sir. First question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You gave a keynote speech at the Bohemian Grove Club, sir. A club which openly has mock child sacrifices and satanic worship, sir. Can you answer my question, sir, please?
I was very pleased. I was very pleased with my performance in the debate. It was a good debate.
What about the Bohemian Grove Club, though, sir? That's very important. They do mock human sacrifices there, sir, and you reported being there.
I was very pleased with my performance in the debate.
Sir, why did you ignore my question, sir? Can we have open dialogue? If you want to be president, let's have an open dialogue about this. You just ignored me, sir.
It's running up a storm about that Bohemian Grove over there. Human sacrifices and male prostitutes shipped in there yearly. I should like to know what goes on over there.
Whether you believe it is merely the location of the most upper-class getaway in America, or if something otherwise far more sinister is occurring within its borders, the Bohemian Grove remains one of the most forbidden and mysterious places in the civilized world.
To confirm the globalist agenda, David Rockefeller, globalist elitist, confirms we are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis and the nations will accept the New World Order. To accomplish their agenda, the Illuminati will eliminate every understanding of individualism in human beings, and their identities will be compromised through brainwashing and ideological indoctrination, therefore implanting new identities and removing the moralistic sense of free will and civil freedoms, turning humanity into walking drones or robots, only capable of receiving instructions and execution of instructions. This form of control will be widespread through the use of MK Ultra and technology used in everyday life to manipulate humanity. The reality you perceive will be a deception. Your ability to think, to see, to comprehend, your rational thought, to speak, to understand, the truth will be controlled. In addition, you'll be spoon-fed information that meets the New World Order agenda.
From the outset of the war, Second World War in 1939, Washington anticipated that the war would end with the United States in a position of overwhelming power. High-level State Department officials and non-governmental foreign policy specialists met regularly through the wartime years. They laid out plans for the post-war world. They delineated what they called a grand area that the U.S. was to dominate. The grand area was to include at least the Western Hemisphere, the entire Far East, and the British Empire, which the U.S. was planning to take over, including the U.S. Middle East energy resources. The British Foreign Office was aware of this. If you look at their documents, not very happy about it, but they said, we're going to have to recognize that we're going to be a junior partner, as they called it, in the evolving world order. Well, that was in the early years of the war. As Russian forces started to grind down the Nazi armies after Stalingrad, the conception of the grand area was enlarged to include as much of Eurasia as possible, including certainly the industrial and commercial center, the heartland of Western Europe. Now, within the Grand Area, I'm now quoting, within the Grand Area, the U.S. was to maintain unquestioned power with military and economic supremacy, while ensuring the limitation of any exercise of sovereignty by states that might interfere with its global designs. That's a live policy right now. I'll come back to crucial instances. One should bear in mind how venerable the doctrine is and how appropriate to the nature of the world that was in fact emerging. You have to remember that when the Second World War ended, the U.S. literally had half the world's wealth, a position of power, of security that was totally unparalleled, nothing like it in history, and that was understood. It's quite clear from the documentary record, I'm quoting now, that President Roosevelt was aiming at United States hegemony in the post-war world. It's quoting British diplomatic historian Geoffrey Warner, quite an accurate assessment. And more significant, the careful wartime plans were implemented in very much the terms in which they were outlined during the war. They were implemented shortly after. Well, it was always recognized from the beginning that Europe might choose to follow an independent path. NATO was partially intended to counter this threat. And rather strikingly, as soon as the official pretext for NATO, protecting Europe from the Russian hordes, as soon as that dissolved in 1989, reflexively NATO was expanded. If anyone had believed the propaganda, it should have disappeared. Instead, it expanded. One of the interesting things that happened in 1989 is a lot of clouds lifted. You could sort of see policy less concealed by ideology. So NATO was expanded to the east. That was in violation of verbal pledges to Gorbachev, which he was naive enough to believe. He was pretty irritated by it, but nothing he could do. And it's since been expanded beyond. Now it's a U.S.-run global intervention force, and it has an official task. The official task is controlling the crucial infrastructure of the global energy system. That's quite an expansive role, and that's what NATO is now committed to. The Grand Area Doctrine limits the sovereignty of others explicitly, but it grants the United States unrestricted rights. That's what it means to be a global hegemon. And that was made very clear and explicit at once. For example, in 1946, when the U.S. agreed to world court jurisdiction, but with a condition. The condition was that the United States would not be subject to any international treaties, meaning the UN Charter, the Charter of the Organization of American States, later the Genocide Convention, and so on. This has come up before the court repeatedly, and the court has accepted, and as it was required to do, the reservation that none of these treaties apply to the United States. The principles also clearly license military intervention at will, and that conclusion has been clearly not only implemented continuously, but also pretty clearly articulated. One tends to think of the right-wing administrations, but that's misleading. One of the most expansive forms of the doctrine was under Clinton, in fact, Bill Clinton. The Clinton administration declared, quote, that the United States has the right to use military force unilaterally to ensure uninhibited access to key markets, energy supplies, and strategic resources, and must maintain military forces forward deployed in Europe and Asia in order to shape people's opinions about us and to shape events that will affect their livelihood and our security. That's actually much more expansive than the much maligned George W. Bush doctrine that came later The Clinton doctrine doesn't even require the pretexts that the Bush doctrine insisted on. But it was presented politely, so therefore it didn't arouse much interest. Actually, the antagonism towards Bush was almost entirely style, not substance. The substance is pretty standard. I think that's one of the reasons Obama was so welcomed in Europe. The style changed, not the substance. But, the same principles governed the invasion of Iraq. That became clearer as U.S. failure to impose its will became clearer. As that proceeded, the actual goals of the invasion couldn't be concealed any longer behind pretty rhetoric about democracy and all sorts of nice things. In November 2007, the White House issued what it called a Declaration of Principles concerning Iraq, 2 main points. One was that U.S. forces must remain indefinitely in Iraq, big military bases, right to carry out combat operations. And secondly, that Iraq must privilege U.S. investors. 2 months later, January 2008, President Bush informed Congress that he would reject legislation that might limit the permanent stationing of U.S. armed forces in Iraq or U.S. control of the oil resources of Iraq, I'm quoting. These are demands, incidentally, that the United States had to abandon shortly after in the face of Iraqi resistance, as it had been forced to back off step by step all the way through. That's a major triumph of nonviolent resistance. That the U.S. and Britain have no trouble at all killing insurgents. They're very good at killing people. But they couldn't deal with the mass nonviolent resistance. Hundreds of thousands of people were demonstrating and protesting. They had to back off, and finally the basic war aims were abandoned, articulated pretty clearly as they were being abandoned. That's a major defeat, as Jonathan Steele and other serious analysts have recognized.
When I started researching the nature of this Orwellian manipulation, it became clear that there are a network of interbreeding bloodlines. What I call and what they call themselves, the Illuminati, which comes from the illuminated ones, have come through history. And as people began to reject overt, in-your-face dictatorship, they became the people who ran the system. You can look at the Bush family, and they are absolutely Illuminati. As presidents of the United States go, Father George Bush, I mean not the idiot's son, but Father George Bush, is higher in the Illuminati than most of them. The British royal family are one of the Illuminati bloodlines. It's all about genetics to these people. They're like horse breeders. Diana basically called herself the Windsor's brood mare, as she was brought into the web merely to be the vehicle to give birth to William. You look at Charles and you look at William, and there's very much a resemblance. But when you look at Harry, well, maybe it's just me, you know. You'll look at the Bushes and people like that, and they look like you and me. The key element is what happens beyond the realm that we can see. This is what the Illuminati bloodlines really are. They are vehicles for other dimensional entities to manipulate this reality. These entities, many of which take a reptilian outer form, are manipulating this world through these Illuminati bloodlines. When I introduce something like these Illuminati bloodlines are based on a reptilian, non-human race, people find it fantastic. Of course it is, because it is so different from the reality and ways of the world that they have grown up believing in. The mainstream media, they want to report, because it's funny, that I am saying these bloodlines are reptilian. But when I'm talking about this stuff, when I try to get in more background, of course, the media's going, oh no, mate, can't talk about that. We need an early out at 20 seconds.